Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel PsyAcademy where we conduct classes for psychology related exams. तो एक बार फिर से सबका स्वागत है हमारे YouTube चैनल PsyAcademy पे, जहाँ पे हम क्लासेस कंडक्ट कराते हैं फॉर ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ साइकोलॉजी रिलेटेड एग्जाम्स. तो अब अगर हम पिछले क्लास की बात करें तो उस पर हमने जो सोशल कॉग्निटिव अप्रोच था टुवर्ड्स पर्सनालिटी बैंड्यूरा का, उस पर हमने बात की थी. So in the previous class we talked about Bandura social cognitive approach towards personality, and now in today's class we will now move on to the humanistic approach towards personality indeed. So Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, if you have heard about them, they are two eminent psychologists who played a leading role in establishing this humanistic approach. But in today's class we will focus on Carl Rogers specifically, because the motivation theory given by Maslow, or rather the concept given by Maslow, the hierarchy needs given by Maslow would be better understood when we or more applicable in motivation rather than personality. So when we will study motivation in this unit itself, that is when we will talk about Maslow. But in this class we will talk about specifically, as the title of the class suggests, we will talk about Carl Rogers approach to personality. तो हम अब्राहम मास्लो का जो थ्योरी है उसके बारे में हम मोटिवेशन जो पार्ट है इस यूनिट का उसमें बढ़ेंगे, और कार्ल रॉजर्स पे ही हम स्पेसिफिकली आज की क्लास में फोकस करेंगे कि कैसे उनका क्या अप्रोच था पर्सनालिटी की तरफ. सो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड. नाउ कार्ल रॉजर्स was an American psychologist who was one of the founders besides Abraham Maslow, जिनकी हमने बात की. अब्राहम मास्लो के अलावा जो एक और फाउंडर थे हमारे ह्यूमनिस्टिक स्कूल के, वो थे कार्ल रॉजर्स. ह्यूमनिस्टिक स्कूल ऑफ साइकोलॉजी. तो one of the founders of this school was Carl Rogers. Now what this school, that is what the humanistic school believed in, what Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow believed in, was that people are inherently good. So if we talk about this school, if we talk about Carl Rogers concept, he opposed the deterministic approach of Sigmund Freud. So this entire theory would be non or not deterministic, as opposed to Freud's belief. Okay, so opposing Freud's belief. So what Freud belief was, if we talk about what determinism is a school of thought or an idea, the concept that believes that whatever actions we show is a result of something that is not according to our will, that something that we do not do willingly, something external. For example, maybe our environment. As you probably are aware, we have done it in the Freud's class itself, Freud's approach towards personality, that he focused more on the childhood, how your childhood went, and all sorts of environment that you have gotten during your childhood. But Freud did not believe that you would have a sense of will that is inherent to you, that is innate, and that you that can guide your behavior, that you have a free will to, rather free will would be something that comes under the existential approach, but you have the will that you can change, that you inherently are good. That is something that was given by or believed by the humanistic psychology, the humanistic approach. So they believed that human beings are inherently good, so which is a very extremely positive or extremely optimistic kind of approach, as opposed to positive psychology that we will study about later. But this school believes that people are inherently good, they want to be good, they want to do well on their own, and they make the decisions on their own, and it is not some external cause that is guiding them. So this humanistic approach, Carl Rogers' approach, was non-deterministic, and it believed that humans are inherently good. Now another important concept is that, very important actually, is that they believed in the self-actualizing, or rather we should say, we believed in the concept of self-actualization. Now although the you would associate self-actualization with Maslow, with Abraham Maslow, because according to his hierarchy needs, this is the highest kind of need that you can reach, that one reaches. Not everyone is able to reach. We will study about that later. But in the NET exam, whenever if you get an option that if Carl Rogers, if he did believe that, if he did believe in self-actualization, so you have to mark that option, because although maybe he did not use that word exactly, but he did believe in, his school, the entire school believes in it, and so does Carl Rogers. So he believes in, the self-actualization tendency, which is reaching your highest potential. So the self-actualization tendency is a very important concept behind or in the humanistic approach, which thinks that people are capable of reaching their highest potential. तो अगर हम एक बार फिर से देखें तो जो कार्ल रॉजर्स का जो अप्रोच था, इनफैक्ट जो ह्यूमनिस्टिक पूरा साइकोलॉजी का अप्रोच था, जिसके फाउंडर थे कार्ल रॉजर्स, तो उनका ये मानना था कि एक तो ये कि जो ह्यूमंस हैं, जो भी उनके एक्शंस हैं वो नॉन डिटर्मिनिस्टिक हैं, यानी कि वो किसी एक्सटर्नल फोर्स से नहीं, उनके अपने अंदर के विल पावर से वो डिसाइड हो सकता है। और उनका मानना था, उनका बहुत एक एक्सट्रीमली ऑप्टिमिस्टिक पॉजिटिव एक अप्रोच था, बहुत ही सकारात्मक, कि जो ह्यूमंस हैं, जो इंसान हैं, वो इनहेरेंटली गुड हैं, कि वो पैदाइशी, वो एक उनमें एक अच्छा करने की, अच्छा बनने की एक इच्छा होती है। और सेल्फ एक्चुअलाइजेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट दिया गया था मेनली मैस्लो द्वारा, बट कार्ल रॉजर्स भी इसमें बिलीव करते थे, जिसमें माना जाता था कि जो ह्यूमंस हैं वो अपना बेस्ट देना चाहते हैं, अपना बेस्ट पोटेंशियल रीच करना चाहते हैं। तो इसके बारे में डिटेल में हम जब अब्राहम मास्लो के बारे में पढ़ेंगे, दैट इज़ व्हेन वी विल स्टडी अबाउट दैट। सो अगर हम ब्रीफली देखें, दिस इज़ व्हाट द ह्यूमनिस्टिक अप्रोच इज, एंड दिस इज़ व्हाट कार्ल रॉजर्स बिलीव वाज। So now we will move on to the different important concepts that were given by Carl Rogers. Now एक और important concept है जो भी पूछा जा सकता है exam point of view से important. So phenomenology is a quantitative technique, a quantitative method to collect data. It is one of the quantitative methods to collect data जो हम पढ़ेंगे यूनिट 1 में, तो और यूनिट 2 में भी। बट ये जो मेथड था, ये कार्ल रॉजर्स इसको यूज़ करते थे, ही यूज टू बिलीव इन दैट द एंटायर ह्यूमनिस्टिक अप्रोच रादर इज़ बेस्ड ऑन दिस मेथड ऑफ कलेक्टिंग डेटा और अंडरस्टैंडिंग पीपल रादर। सो फिनोमेनोलॉजी इज अंडरस्टैंडिंग people's lived experiences. This is what phenomenology is. I'm sorry. तो phenomenology में ऐसा माना जाता था कि जो ये एक क्वालिटेटिव मेथड है डेटा कलेक्ट करने का, ये न्यूमेरिकल नंबर्स पे बेस्ड नहीं है, क्वांटिटेटिव नहीं है, वो हम पढ़ेंगे यूनिट 2 में। बट ये एक क्वालिटेटिव मेथड है जिसमें हम एक इंसान के किसी भी चीज़ को लेके उनका पर्सपेक्टिव समझने की कोशिश करते हैं। हम इवेंट पे नहीं, उस इंसान के एक्सपीरियंस पे फोकस करते हैं, उनके लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस पे, कि उन्होंने कैसे जिया उस एक्सपीरियंस को, उस पर फोकस करते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल, लेट्स से 2 स्टूडेंट्स हैं, दोनों ने एक सेम मैथ्स का या किसी भी सब्जेक्ट का, मे बी लेट्स से साइकोलॉजी का एग्ज़ाम उन्होंने फेल किया। So both of them failed. There are 2 students both of whom failed in a certain psychology exam. Now the first student, they think that I'm not good at this subject, that I'm not capable, और कि मैं ये नहीं कर सकती, ऐसा पहले जो स्टूडेंट था उसने सोचा। और जो स्टूडेंट बी था, जो दूसरा स्टूडेंट था, उन्होंने सोचा कि उस दिन मेरी तबीयत नहीं अच्छी थी या मैंने एनफ एफर्ट नहीं डाला, अगली बार मैं और अच्छे से एफर्ट डालूंगी एंड आई विल डू बेटर, या डालूंगा एंड आई विल डू बेटर. सो दीज आर लाइक इट इज़ द सेम एग्जाम बट the same experience, but two different the same circumstance, the same situation, but two different experiences or perceptions of the same incident, the same situation. So that is what phenomenology is, understanding the lived experiences of different individuals, how each individual understands each phenomena or anything that is happening to them. So that is what was used in this entire field to understand people. So that is one important point, that humanistic used phenomenology. Now the next concept we will discuss is the organismic valuing process. So what is the organismic valuing process? According to Carl Rogers, all of us, we know what is good for us and what is not good for us. So we have like an internal compass which helps us decide in what direction we should go, what would be beneficial for us and what would not be. For example, let us say there is a woman or a man, anybody who takes up a job that is high paying, but then that is not satisfying to her, maybe something unethical also she has to do, so she is not able to, she doesn't want to do it. She feels like, you know, it's not helping her, or that, you know, mentally she's suffering a lot because she has to do something wrong. So she believes this job is not good for her basically. So what she does is she decides to change her job, she switches her job, and then which is maybe not a very well paying job, but at least it is ethical and at least it makes her, she gets fulfillment out of it. So now she decided what is good for her and she acted accordingly. So our organismic valuing process, ये एक इंटरनल एक कंपास जैसा है अकॉर्डिंग टू कार्ल रॉजर्स, जिसमें इंसान जानता है कि उसके लिए क्या सही है क्या गलत है और अकॉर्डिंगली वो अपने लिए डिसीजंस बनाता है. मे बी जैसे हम बात कर रहे थे एक एग्जांपल की, एक इंसान है जिसको पता है कि मैं अभी जो जॉब कर रहा हूँ मे बी वो मेरे लिए सही नहीं है, मे बी वो गलत है, एथिकली गलत है, या मे बी उनकी ग्रोथ में वो कंट्रीब्यूट नहीं करेगा, तो फिर वो जॉब स्विच कर लेते हैं ताकि एक ऐसा जॉब जो मे बी उतनी अच्छी सैलरी ना हो उसकी, बट उनको एक सेंस ऑफ सेटिस्फैक्शन, एक सेंस ऑफ फुलफिलमेंट मिलता है, मिलता है. तो इसीलिए क्योंकि वो अवेयर है, एक इंसान अवेयर है अकॉर्डिंग टू रॉजर्स कि उनके लिए क्या सही है गलत है, सो दे एक्ट अकॉर्डिंगली. सो दिस ऑल्सो गाइड्स आर बिहेवियर. सो दैट इज वॉट आर ऑर्गेनिस्मिक वैल्यूइंग प्रोसेस इज, वेयर humans according to Rogers know what's good for them and they act or behave accordingly. So that is what our organismic valuing process is. Now our next very important concept would be, what Rogers believed is that if love or acceptance or approval is based on, if love or acceptance is given based on some conditions versus unconditionally. सो कार्ल रॉजर्स का ये मानना था कि लव और एक्सेप्टेंस जो है, अप्रूवल है, वो दो तरीके से एक इंसान को अकॉर्डिंगली जैसे जैसे मिलते हैं उसके अकॉर्डिंग उनका एक सेल्फ फॉर्म होता है. सेल्फ की बात हम आगे करते हैं. तो लेट अस से एक इंसान है जिसको सिर्फ कुछ ही कंडीशंस में लव और एक्सेप्टेंस मिलता है. फॉर एग्जांपल देयर इज समवन हु only when they do not express anger, they do not show anger, or when they, you know, listens to everybody, this person, they do not express their own opinions, they do not express disapproval. So only then they are given love and acceptance, love and approval, otherwise they are not. So in that situation what this individual will develop is conditions of worth, which is also known as conditional positive regard. I'm writing the short form here, but you understand what it means, right? So these are the same thing. जब एक किसी कंडीशन पे ही आपको लव या एक्सेप्टेंस मिल रहा है, अप्रूवल मिल रहा है सोसाइटी से, तो आप में एक कंडीशन ऑफ वर्थ या एक कंडीशनल पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड आप में डेवलप होता है, जिसमें आपको लगता है कि अगर मैं ऐसे ऐसे बिहेव करूँगा, मे बी इस इंसान की अगर हम बात करें जिसकी हम एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं, तो अब उनको दे विल नॉट बी कंफर्टेबल विद एक्सप्रेसिंग देयर फ्रस्ट्रेशन. हमेशा वो सबकी बात मान के चलेंगे, अपने ओपिनियंस नहीं देंगे और दबते जाएंगे, डोर मैट बन जाएंगे मे बी. तो क्योंकि उनको ये उन्होंने बचपन से सीखा है मे बी कि अगर तुम ऐसे बिहेव करोगे तभी तुम्हें अप्रूवल मिलेगा, सो दे लर्न टू बिहेव अकॉर्डिंगली. सो दिस इज़ व्हाट इज़ कंडीशनल पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड. नाउ अगर वर्सेस ऑन द अदर साइड, अगर आपको अनकंडीशनली पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड, लव, रिस्पेक्ट मिलता है, तो एज द नेम सजेस्ट कि अनकंडीशनल पॉजिटिव रिगार्ड इज़ व्हाट डेवलप्स इन यू, जिसमें आपको कॉन्फिडेंस होता है कि मैं कुछ भी करूं, मैं सही करूं, गलत करूं. हाँ, अगर गलत करेंगे तो ऑफ कोर्स यू विल बी स्कोल्डेड, थोड़ा बहुत पनिशमेंट में भी मिले, बट आप कुछ भी करें, आपको आपके अच्छा या बुरा करने पे आपको जो लव या एक्सेप्टेंस मिल रहा है वो उस पर डिपेंड नहीं करता कि आप कितने अच्छे हैं कि बुरे हैं. regardless of everything, maybe your parents or people close to you, they love you in the end. So if that is the case, then this kind of individual will develop an unconditional positive regard. They will not be afraid to express, let's say, a certain emotion or behave in a certain way, because they know regardless, the people who matter to this person will love them any which ways. So that is our unconditional positive regard. Now let us move on to the next concept, very important one given by Carl Rogers, that is the self. So the very first point is the self here is conscious versus if you talk about Freud's self, that was unconscious. He focused more on the unconscious, but जो कार्ल रॉजर्स का सेल्फ है वो कॉन्शियस है. और क्या है ये सेल्फ कि आपका अपने बारे में क्या सोच है, क्या समझ है, आप अपने बारे में कितने अवेयर हैं, क्या सोचते हैं, दैट इज़ बेसिकली योर सेल्फ. So how much of yourself are you aware of, what you think of yourself, how you measure your maybe achievements and everything. So whatever you know, whatever you're aware about your own self is basically, as the term suggests, it's just yourself. So this self is of two kinds. First we have our real self, and second we have our ideal self. So what are these? Our real self is what we really are basically. So it's what we really do, what we really believe in, we understand through an example. And versus the ideal self is something that is formed by societal societal expectations, or whatever you observe in your environment, whatever you think is acceptable in that environment, that is your ideal self. What you think you should be, if we talk in basic terms, then whatever you think you should be according to the society or people around you, that is your ideal self. And what you actually are, what you actually feel, is what your real self is. So for example, let us say there is an individual who deep down they want to be, let us say, a psychologist, they want to study psychology, but according to societal expectations, their parents' expectations, they want them to go for engineering because they think that their son or daughter is very smart, or that there is more chances of having a stable career in engineering versus in psychology. So now, because this individual respects their parents, they cannot say no, so they internalize their parents' beliefs, their parents' expectations, and then while their real self is to wanting to study psychology, become a psychologist, their ideal self becomes, so they go for science, they opt for science, they do BTech, and they want to be an engineer because their parents expect them to be. So that is their ideal self, which they think they should do, versus the real self where they want to be psychologists. This is what they actually want to do, they actually desire to do. So that is what the difference is between a real and ideal self. Now let's move on to what happens when there is less overlap, more overlap, mismatch between these two concepts. Now let's move on to what happens, as we just talked about, if there is a mismatch or more alignment in the ideal and real self. So we will talk about the concept of congruence and accordingly incongruence. So let's represent this through a diagram. So let's just say there are two cases. So these are our two cases. Let us say this is A and this is B. So this is, one is our ideal self, one is our real self. Ideal and real. This is the overlap between these. So maybe if you've done Venn diagrams in your when you were maybe in 9th, 10th, so if you remember, so this is our ideal self, this is our real self of person A, and this is the ideal and the real self of our person B. Now for example, let us say there is an individual A who wants to be, let us say, a psychologist. So they want to be or let us say they want to be an assistant professor, but so what they actually want to be, that would be their real self. They really want to teach, they want to be an assistant professor, but their ideal self is that they have seen people around, like most of the psychologists, most of their peers, they wanted to become counselors, they wanted to do private practice, and they were interested in counseling. So now the ideal self becomes to become a counselor, but what they actually want to be is an assistant professor, or they just want to teach and they do not want to, they are not interested in practicing as such. So now they will, while they are taking in internships or they are taking in jobs that focus more on counseling, on providing counseling skills basically, or building up counseling skills, what they really want to do is learning to teach, maybe start with the schools and then move on to colleges. So there is a discrepancy, there is a mismatch between their real and ideal self. So here in this case what we will see is, we will see incongruence in the first case. Now in the second case of this person B, we see that this person also wants to be an assistant professor, they also want to teach, and therefore they are looking for jobs that are related to teaching, that will help them build up that confidence and build up that classroom management skills and etc. So they are looking for jobs that are related to that. They have heard that many people, they have also heard that many people want to many students, they who opt for counseling, who opt for psychology, they go for counseling, they want to do private practice, but this individual focuses on what their real self is, what they really want to do, and they look for jobs that will help them become an assistant professor in the future. So there is a lot of overlap between in this individual, between the real and ideal self. There is a lot of alignment, versus here where there is a lot of mismatch. So when there is a lot of alignment, lot of the real and ideal self, it matches, that is what this situation would be called a state of congruence. So these are our two situations, very important ones, where when there is very less overlap between your real and ideal self, what you really believe, what you really want to do, versus what you think you should be done, that is when incongruence results. There is a lot of anxiety. The more the incongruence is, the more the anxiety or more self-doubt you will have about yourself, versus when it comes to the state of congruence, there is a lot of overlap between your real and ideal self. Now if we say in a practical sense, it's not possible to completely overlap, or that your real and ideal self are practically the same. That is not possible usually, practically speaking. So there is, even Rogers said that there is a lot of overlap between the real and the ideal self. So the more the overlap, you try to increase that kind, whatever you really want to do, and if your actions are also accordingly. So that is what results in a state of congruence, which will further help you achieve a sense of self-actualization tendency, which will help you move towards that in a better manner. So this is what another very important concept is. Now we will move on with our next topic. Now let us talk about what Carl Rogers believed would be the characteristics of a fully functioning individual, which is somebody who has healthy thought patterns, who is a healthy individual mentally, that is, personality wise, who is self-actualized, who has already reached the self-actualized state, the self-actualized limit. Okay, so such kind of individual, according to Carl Rogers, exhibits these 5 characteristics. So like there are more, but like mainly these are what Carl Rogers believed would be seen in a fully functioning individual. So the first one is openness to experience. So this individual would be open to all kinds of experience, be it positive or negative. Everything that they come across, they are open to it. They do not wither easily, they do not give in easily, and they are open to all kinds of experience that they come along, all sorts of situations or conditions that they come across in life. तो एक जो फुली फंक्शनिंग इंडिविजुअल है, जो एक फुली फंक्शनिंग पर्सन है, तो अकॉर्डिंग टू कार्ल रॉजर्स उनमें ये 5 कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स देखने को मिलते हैं मेनली. ये एक ऐसा इंसान है जो एक हेल्दी थॉट पैटर्न, एक हेल्दी पर्सनैलिटी कैरी करता है, और जो सेल्फ एक्चुअलाइजेशन का स्टेज रीच कर चुका है. तो जो फर्स्ट पॉइंट है ओपननेस टू एक्सपीरियंस, तो ऐसा इंसान हर टाइप के, सकारात्मक हो नकारात्मक हो, हर टाइप के एक्सपीरियंस के लिए वो तैयार रहते हैं, वो ओपन रहते हैं, वो अवेलेबल रहते हैं, वो बहुत जल्दी गिव इन नहीं करते, गिव अप नहीं करते. नाउ द नेक्स्ट इज एग्जिस्टेंशियल लिविंग. सो एग्जिस्टेंशियल लिविंग, व्हाट द एग्जिस्टेंशियल entire philosophy school it focuses on is living in the present, focusing on the present, and also a sense of will. So in existential living, what Carl Rogers meant was that you focus on your present and you do not focus a lot on the past or the future. So our existential living would be focusing on the present and not on the past or future, getting anxious about the future. Now organismic trusting is basically trusting your instincts. You trust your inner feelings, experiences, you trust what you really believe, you trust what you feel deep down, you trust your instincts. So that is also that is what organismic trusting means, and that is what according to Rogers is also one of the characteristics of a fully functioning person. So the fourth one is experiential freedom, where you have the freedom to make choices. So freedom to make choices or to take decisions. This is our experiential freedom. Now the fifth one, creativity, is how you express yourself in a unique manner, maybe by contributing to the world or doing things that contribute to your personal growth. So it focuses on the creativity about how you express yourself. So these are our 5 characteristics of a fully functioning individual. Next we'll move on to the kind of therapy that Carl Rogers gave. Now let's talk about Carl Rogers therapy that he gave, the kind of therapy that Carl Rogers gave. So this therapy that Rogers gave, it is called client-centered therapy, and especially it is called client-centered because it's a non-directive kind of therapy, where the therapist not only does not tell the client what to do, but here actually what we see is that the client leads the therapy sessions, and what the therapist does is provides support, a kind of a supportive environment where the client can feel comfortable and accordingly open up and decide where the direction of the therapy, of the sessions. So this is what is important in the client centered therapy. It is client centered because जो थेरेपिस्ट है वो सिर्फ एक सपोर्टिव एनवायरनमेंट प्रोवाइड करता है, और जो क्लाइंट है वो उस सपोर्टिव एनवायरनमेंट में धीरे धीरे अपने इमोशंस को एक्सप्रेस करता है और डिसाइड करता है कि जो थेरेपी है वो किस डायरेक्शन में, किस दिशा में जाना चाहिए, कैसे जाना चाहिए. सो दैट इज़ वाई इसीलिए इसको क्लाइंट सेंटर्ड थेरेपी बोलते हैं. तो अब हम बात करते हैं सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट की, जो 3 हम उनको कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स बोल सकते हैं ऑफ द थेरेपिस्ट हु does this therapy. तो एक जो client centered therapist है, a client centered therapist should have these 3 characteristics or whatever you want to call it, these 3 qualities to provide support to the client such that they can open up and they can lead the sessions. So these 3 would be, the first is congruence, then we have empathy, and finally we have unconditional positive regard. So this point we already talked about, but let's talk about it again. Okay, so congruence is what Carl Rogers meant by that was genuineness. That how genuine, how real the therapist is. Is the therapist faking to be understand the client, or faking to be a certain someone while there's somebody else? So are they authentic, are they genuine? So the genuineness of the therapist would be what what Carl Rogers meant by congruence. Next, by empathy he meant was, what it literally means, that how much the client is able to understand the the therapist is able to understand the client. Are they able to put themselves in the client's shoes and understand their point of view? So how much of genuine understanding is being developed throughout the session? How much of it the therapist is able to do? Now the unconditional positive regard, as we talked about, it focuses on understanding the client and being non-judgmental. That is what Carl Rogers meant by unconditional positive regard. So these are the 3 characteristics that he believed should be there in a therapist to provide a supportive environment where the client could open up and share their problems, share whatever their concerns are. So again, if we see, congruence is how genuine, how authentic the therapist is. Empathy here is how deeply you understand the client, their problems, their feelings. And unconditional positive regard is how, while you understand them, are you doing it non-judgmentally, or are you judging them throughout the process? So you should not judge, according to Carl Rogers, and even as your therapist, you should not judge the client for whatever they do, and you should give them unconditional positive regard and respect, irrespective of what they believe, what they show, what they feel. So this is what the client-centered therapy is. Now with this we end today's class. This is all about Carl Rogers' approach towards personality, and as we talked about earlier about Maslow, we will talk about in his entire theory, his concept we will talk about when we start the motivational part of this unit. So thank you so much for listening to our class, for studying with us. I'll do this again. So thank you so much for studying with us, today in this class. This is it for our Carl Rogers personality approach, his humanistic approach towards personality. Now in the next class we will continue. Soon we will release the next class. So please, if you did like this class, do like, share and subscribe. Also, these are recorded classes, but there are more detailed live classes that happen. So, and also there are test series, the links to which will be provided in the description, so you can enroll and study with us accordingly. So thank you so much for associating with us. Have a good day.